Powerhouse Hobbs is obviously what his name suggests, but aside from his tremendous power, what else do we know about him? We did some research and found out some interesting things about him, so let's get going with Number 10. He has a big family. Hobbs has already 3 children, and he's 31 years old, so it's not that surprising, right? Well, wait until you hear his first son's age. 16. You heard that right, so, do the math to find out when Hobbs had his first kid. He had huge responsibilities from a very young age, and by the time we'll end this video, your respect for Hobbs will skyrocket. The things this man has done to provide for his family are mind-blowing. But for now, let's talk about Number 9. His WWE appearance. Almost every wrestler who has been around long enough has some ties to WWE. Some have worked dark matches, others on NXT, and others as security guards. So, what about Hobbs? Do you remember that whack Dean Ambrose gas mask gimmick? Do you remember his entourage? Well, Hobbs was one of them. The two reunited in AEW, and Mox actually recognized him, and Will was very happy that Mox remembered who he was. He described his experience in an interview with John's wife Renee Paquette, and I quote, "We were talking about how hard it was to breathe. It was cool that he remembered me. He didn't remember my name, but he was like, 'Don't I know you from somewhere?' I told him and it clicked." Mox is good people. Number 8. His height, real name and more. Powerhouse Hobbs, formerly known as Will Hobbs, is kinda using his real name as his work name. The real name is William Hobson, but he wasn't always known as Hobbs in the pro wrestling business. He used to go by Will Rude, until he decided that this isn't a catchy name. He had a talk with his mentor Ezekiel Jackson and he suggested Hobbs. The name was inspired by Dwayne Johnson's character in the Fast and Furious franchise. But what about Powerhouse? Well, one day Tony Khan just looked at him and said the word powerhouse. Hobbs just loved it, and the next week he officially became Powerhouse Hobbs. He was born in East Palo Alto, California, and he stands at 6 feet 1 inch, or 185 centimeters. He made his pro wrestling debut on July 18, 2009, at the very young age of 18. Number 7. Typical WWE tactics. We've mentioned in many videos that WWE had passed on several wrestlers, until they started appearing in AEW. Then, all of a sudden, WWE wanted to sign them, and that's exactly what happened to Hobbs too. Just when he started wrestling on AEW Dark, he was contacted by WWE, but he wasn't having it. He was irritated by this tactic, and he signed with All Elite because they showed genuine interest in him. He also had a dark match with Baron Corbin during his time in WWE, and it was in San Jose, which is about 30 minutes from where he is. Number 6. Describing how he got signed full-time. Hobbs was working a per-appearance contract, before he got signed full-time. The story is pretty cool. This is how he described it, and I quote, "I wrestled Darby Allin on the Saturday Night Dynamite that we had. I'm stretching, and Tony Khan goes, 'Hey Willie, I bet you're gonna knock it out of the park tonight.' He takes a couple of steps away from me, and then he comes back and goes, 'Oh, yeah, after tonight, I'm going to sign you.' This is before I go out, and I couldn't believe it. I did my match with Darby, and Tony had his hand in that match, which was really cool that he put me in that position. On September 5th, at the pay-per-view, I was told that I was going to be in the Casino Battle Royale, and it was going to be a surprise. About a week later, I got offered a contract." Unquote. Hobbs also revealed that when he learned about the contract, he sat down and he cried. All his teachers were doubting him, saying that he won't make it past 19 years old. But Hobbs isn't just a physically strong person, he's also a mentally strong warrior, and the next story confirms that. Number 5. He had a rough childhood and an even tougher adulthood. Hobbs was raised by his grandparents who happened to love pro wrestling, and that's how he fell in love with it as well. As we stated, he had a kid at 15 years old and his teachers thought that Hobbs won't be alive for long. The sad part is that they were almost right. Hobbs lost his brother in a very traumatizing way. He told the story on Talk is Jericho, and I quote, "We were tight. He wanted to be in the wrestling business and he wanted to be my manager. He was a tall lanky dude like Slick. He can talk. We always said he could sell an Eskimo snow. He had that type of game. Just got into the wrong crowd and ended up not doing what you're supposed to do. He ended up getting shot, and I ended up getting hit in the forearm, getting shoved out of the way. I was 22 at the time. Pro wrestling is a shared dream with him and my grandparents. It's been 10 years, and it still hurts. Number 4. The hardships made him tough. We talked about how Hobbs had to become a man from a very young age, and he rose to the occasion. He did everything to make his dream a reality and to provide for his family. He would drive for 9 hours to wrestle at a show for $20, or sometimes for free. He would set up the ring, he would do anything. It's such a wholesome story seeing him where he is now, after everything he has gone through. Number 3. His job before All Elite Wrestling. Hobbs was working for Facebook and Instagram. He was running their facilities department, which included 4 different buildings. One day he got a call telling him that he'll get a month off with pay. Hobbs was happy that he'd finally spend more time with his family. His joy didn't last long though, as a few hours later he received another call telling him that he's fired. He couldn't believe it. Yet another hardship that he had to overcome to reach his goals. Number 2. He wasn't always a powerhouse. Some guys are just genetically blessed, and they are muscular and big without even putting much work in. Hobbs must be one of these guys, right? Wrong. He was actually a very skinny kid. He weighed only 142 pounds, or 64 kilos when he graduated from high school, around half of what he weighs now. His son, however, is a different story. He's already at 6 feet 5 inches or 195 centimeters, and his weight is 212 pounds or 96 kilos. Given their small age gap, I think it's very possible that we see them wrestling as a tag team in a few years, but for now Will's son is playing basketball. Hobbs has been told that his son will probably reach somewhere around 6'10" or even 7 feet, so he could easily become a center. Number 1. His inspiration and some funny moments. Powerhouse has shared that Booker T was one of his favorites growing up. The WWE Hall of Famer has mentioned that Hobbs was in many WWE shows and he always had his bag with him, ready to be given a chance. Hobbs has also trained with Booker, and Booker T is very happy to see Hobbs doing good. And now, let's close this video with some of his YouTube appearances. He doesn't appear that often, and he doesn't talk much, which is what's best for his character, but he still manages to be entertaining.
Do you know he powerbombed me on the cruise?
Hear this, get that. Powerbombed him on the cruise.
You just walk around like this and they'll give you what you want.
No, I've actually been hitting the flight a few times.
I'm telling you, man. Hey, oh! You turn around right now.
You're not a pretty girl.
That's what you think you saw?
I thought he was a pretty girl for a second.
You thought Powerhouse Will Hobbs was a pretty girl. Yeah, I think you need to run. I think you need to run. You,
hey,
need
you
to
look
go.
good,
You need
dude.
to go fast. Go fast.
Yeah, he's not
Save yourself. Save yourself.
Will, are you robbing Santa Claus? You just took $2. Merry Christmas, I guess.
Hey.